I think that we should make a start. So, hello and welcome everybody to the next NELI Programme webinar. My name is Sarah Hearn and I work as part of the NELI team at Oxford and Assessment. And I'm looking forward to talking to you today about how you can be a champion for oral language support at your school, both this year and into the future. So to let you know what to expect from this session, we will be here until about 4:30 today. And I'm going to start us off with a poll to get to know the group that we've got in the session today a little bit better. Then I'll quickly recap the core elements of the NELI programme because I know that we do have some people who are brand new to NELI with us today. So welcome to everybody that's new to NELI. Next, I will cover off a few key ways that you can extend the benefits of NELI out to your whole cohort if you are delivering NELI sessions this year. Now, if you haven't yet started NELI this year, then the next section will be for you because I will discuss why it's not too late to start and how your children can benefit from you starting now. Then I'll talk about a selection of techniques which you can use when interacting with children, whether in NELI sessions or just in general conversation or teaching, which will support their language development. And then I'll round off with 3 steps, which if you take them this school year, will boost your team's ability to support language development both this year and next. And we'll finish off with a Q&A as usual, where I'll share a couple of questions that we've received via the registration form. And as always, please submit your own questions and comments into the webinar Q&A. Our support team is on hand to help. And very lastly, a bit of housekeeping. Everybody's cameras and microphones are automatically set to off. So to ask a question, you will need to put it in the Q&A box. And the webinar is being recorded so that we can share it with anyone who wasn't able to attend. Okay, so let's start off by getting to know our group a little bit better. I'm interested in finding out about how your school is currently supporting language development. And hopefully one of the answers provided for you will feel appropriate to your situation, but do feel free to pop any comments into the Q&A as well to let us know what your school is doing. All right, so I'm going to launch a poll now. And hopefully that's flashing up on your screen. So I will have a look at the results in a few minutes. Now, while those responses come in, I think we should remind ourselves about the core elements of NELI. So here's a simple view of the 3 core phases of the NELI programme. Phase 1 is the assessment and training. And this is the time in which staff complete the online NELI training and carry out language screen assessments with all children in the cohort in order to identify those in need of additional targeted support. Generally, this takes between 2 and 6 weeks, and it is usually completed in the autumn term, but not always. Then phase 2 is the intervention itself. This is 20 weeks long and is divided into 2 10-week parts, usually delivered over the spring and the summer terms. And there is now also a whole class add-on to NELI, which is delivered in tandem with the intervention and extends the benefits of the intervention out into the classroom. And some of you might be delivering that too this year. Then finally, phase 3 is for reassessment of the whole cohort with language screen, which enables you to evaluate the children's progress at the end of the year so that you can see the impact of your NELI delivery and also so that you can have a clearer picture of all of the children's language profiles as they move up into the next year group. All right, so I think that the answers are slowing down into the poll. So I will end it here and hopefully you can see the results coming up on your screen as well. All right, so we've got lots of people, most people are delivering NELI this year, which is fantastic. We've got a small number delivering NELI whole class, but obviously lots of you aren't aware about that just yet. I will be chatting about this a little bit more later, and I'll let you know where you can go for more information on that as well. A good chunk of you are delivering NELI and also supporting in other ways, which is fantastic. And then there's a smaller number of you who are sort of not yet to start, but want to start, and are looking for more ideas of ways that you can support language, which is fantastic. Hopefully there'll be sort of a little bit of something for everybody in the webinar today. And just before I move on, for anyone that is brand new to delivering the NELI programme, so for example, if you've just joined a school where it's being delivered, or if you've just taken over as a project lead, this webinar will help you to get an idea of what the NELI programme is all about. But we do have a whole library of other webinars which go into more detail about the assessments, how to get started, practical tips on delivery, and so on. And the QR code on the slide now will take you to this library of webinars on our Teach NELI website. So once you're there, feel free to explore. There's a whole host of information and resources and videos and so on to help you get familiar with NELI. And you can also ask us for help by clicking on the little chat bubble in the bottom right corner of the page. Our support team monitors this live during the day, so you will be able to speak to a human and pretty quickly as well. All right, so for those of you who are already delivering NELI, we know that one thing on your minds is how you can really sort of maximise the value of the intervention by extending the benefits out to your whole class. So let's move on to that next. So as I mentioned earlier, we do now have a add-on to NELI called NELI Whole Class, which provides a structure for you to bring NELI teaching out into the classroom. The DFE funded rollout is focused on the NELI intervention, so I will focus on that primarily today, but I'll be running separate webinars on NELI Whole Class, and if you want more information, you can always contact us on support@teachneli.org, or you can go to the Oxford website, and I'll provide the link for that at the end. Okay, so firstly, let's think about how you can build a sort of a NELI culture and community in your classroom. And thinking about this, developing children's spoken language in early years, it's a shared responsibility. It's the teacher, the TAs, support staff, it's the physical environment that you're in, both inside and outside. They all have a crucial role. And the more opportunities that there are for everybody to talk to each other, to listen to each other, to take part, the more all of the children's confidence will grow. So it's really important to encourage and empower children to communicate with us and each other in continuous provision. And if you're able to link this with the themes that are being worked on in NELI, even better, because this is a vital way in which you will not only extend the benefits out to the whole class, but you'll also be reinforcing the NELI children's learning and providing them with opportunities to practice their new vocabulary and narrative skills that they're working on in their sessions. So if you've already delivered some NELI, you'll already know that the topics covered really lend themselves to extension into real world and sort of role play scenarios. And on the next couple of slides, there are just a few ideas of how the themes that are addressed in NELI can be extended out into continuous provision. There's also a lot of crossover between the NELI topics. So just as an example, if you set up a sort of a doctor or hospital or vet role play area, this would encourage children to use vocabulary from topic 1, my body, but also topic 2, things we wear, and also topic 3, people who help us. So lots of crossover there between the topics, just with one sort of role play area. Likewise, if you had a sort of play kitchen area where children can play with toy fruits and vegetables using vocabulary from topic 4, which is growing, they will likely also be talking about using the sink to wash and clean and dry their hands, which is all vocabulary from topic 1. And this is important because by sort of purposely incorporating NELI's topic themes into your continuous provision, you're giving the NELI children lots of opportunities to practice their new vocabulary in a meaningful context and with a purpose, which is to play. And you're also giving them the vocabulary tools that they need in order to be able to join in and play with their peers, which they might not have been able to do otherwise if they didn't have that pre-teaching. And you're also potentially giving them the opportunity to teach this new vocabulary to their peers, which is obviously an incredibly sort of confidence boosting experience. And meanwhile, while all of this is happening for the NELI children, the children who aren't in the NELI sessions are also benefiting from this language rich environment where speaking and communicating with each other is encouraged, but also is fun. So, building on this point, as we know, throughout NELI delivery, we introduce lots of new and at times challenging vocabulary. And the more often that all of the children hear this vocabulary, the more easily they will embed it. And a really great way to reinforce the special words, which is the target vocabulary, outside of the NELI sessions, is to tell fellow members of staff what the special words are each week so that they can look for or create opportunities to use them with the children. And here I actually wanted to let some of you guys do the talking by sharing some examples that you've posted in the comments section of the NELI refresher training, which I just thought were really lovely. So there are a couple of examples here where the practitioner has used a school trip or they've organised a special visit to reinforce the vocabulary. So, for example, they went on a school trip to a farm and they were using some of the vocabulary from topic 4, from the growing topic. Or they had, and another one had a parent who was a postwoman, and she came in and spoke to the children about her job and was obviously using a lot of the vocabulary from people who help us topic. But there are also examples on this slide where the practitioners have used really just day-to-day occurrences and routines to build in the vocabulary. So, for example, like commenting on the sirens that they hear going past outside the classroom, or in this bottom left one, deciding or using items of clothing to decide who gets off the carpet first, and so on. And finally, it may well be that the stories that you are using in your curriculum anyway align with those that are being used in NELI. There are 4 traditional tales used in NELI and NELI whole class. And these are the Gingerbread Man, Cinderella, the Enormous Turnip, and Tortoise and the Hare. And so you may find that you can very easily sort of link up the work that you're already doing in class with what's being done in NELI. And for those of you who are delivering NELI whole class alongside NELI, the idea behind its design was to give you the tools that you need to extend the NELI themes out into the classroom in exactly this way, but with a structure that you can follow each week and resources that you can use to do it. So hopefully you're finding it helpful to have those sort of ready-made whole class activities there for you. But for those who aren't using NELI whole class, I would really recommend that you go to the refresher course, the NELI refresher course step 19, where you can look for ideas from other practitioners like the ones on the slide. That's where I got these ideas from. Okay, so finally, the principles and routines that are used in NELI can absolutely be brought out into the classroom to benefit all children while reinforcing the work that the NELI children are doing in their targeted sessions. So, for example, you could incorporate some of the NELI routines into whole class time by displaying a days of the week board, whether it's the one from the NELI materials or you could create your own, and asking a child each day to put up the day of the week star. You could also display the listening rules and refer back to these when managing behaviour in class. And obviously tied to the listening rules is, of course, TED. TED doesn't only have to come out in NELI sessions. He could perhaps become a classroom mascot. We all know that TED is a firm favourite with the NELI children, so why not consider making him a familiar face for all of the children and using him to support your lessons or to manage behaviour. Okay, so far I've given lots of advice for those of you who are delivering NELI. But I know that there will be some of you who want to get started but haven't managed to do so yet. So let's talk next about why it's not too late to start with NELI this year. Okay, so firstly, bit of background, excuse me. In addition to a series of, excuse me, I'm just gonna have a sip of water. That's much better. So in addition to a series of randomized controlled trials, NELI has also undergone multiple independent evaluations. The most recent evaluation was of the impact of NELI when delivered in schools as part of the national rollout funded by the DFE. So these were schools that delivered NELI completely outside of, controlled trial conditions and within the challenging circumstances brought about by COVID-19, which I'm sure that everybody on this call is all too familiar with. Now, this independent evaluation, which was carried out by the National Foundation of Educational Research, or NFER, and funded by the Education Endowment Foundation, EEF, found that children who received NELI in these schools did show significant improvements in their language skills compared to children who didn't receive NELI. In fact, they made between 4 and 7 months of additional progress on average. And obviously, this is reassuring evidence of the effectiveness of NELI when delivered in, real life school conditions. But the key thing to pull out here as well is that they also found that the language benefits of NELI start to emerge pretty early in intervention delivery, and they grow with the number of sessions that were delivered. So the more NELI that's delivered, the better the impact of the intervention. But schools who weren't able to deliver the full programme did still see some improvement. And the other bit of evidence to mention here is that NELI doesn't just improve language. From the very, very first session, the structure and routines that are built into NELI help to improve children's active listening skills and their behaviour more broadly. And we've also heard from practitioners that they see improvements in children's confidence very quickly in the intervention. And I'll give a few examples of all of the above on the next slide. But before that, I also wanted to mention two broader benefits of getting started with the NELI programme for you and your team. So firstly, delivering some NELI, no matter how far you get, will make you better prepared to start earlier next year. You will have completed the training, you'll have organised your resources, perhaps you'll have found a physical space and some time in the timetable that works well for the sessions, although, of course, I know that that could change from year to year. You will also have got a sense of how the sessions are structured, how to use the handbook, and so on. And all of this will make the process of getting started feel less intimidating next year. And so it is a fantastic use of your time. And finally, I mentioned the training. If you haven't done so already, I would really strongly recommend making the training a priority for this year. The training isn't just about how to deliver NELI. It also teaches you how language develops, how to spot children whose language isn't developing as you'd expect. And it also provides teaching strategies, which can be used immediately. And I'll go through some of these shortly. All of this means that the training is useful to understand the sort of the why behind language and language intervention, not just the how. Although, of course, if you are planning to deliver NELI, the how is obviously important as well. Okay, so just before we move on to some key teaching techniques, I just wanted to share again some comments from practitioners that have come in on the NELI training who have seen the impact of NELI in a relatively short space of time on language, but also on behaviour, confidence, as I mentioned earlier. And of course, these are all hugely important factors in helping children to engage and learn in the classroom, as I'm sure you'll all know. Okay. I mentioned that the NELI training teaches you how to use certain techniques to support language development, whether that's in NELI sessions or in the classroom. So I'll go through a selection of these next. Okay, now there is so much helpful information on the NELI training, and I won't be able to cover everything today, but hopefully I can give you a sense of how really relatively minor adjustments to how you speak and interact with the children can make a huge difference to supporting their language development. So the first one here is to think about word order. So matching word order in your speech to the order of actions or events that you're referring to typically makes your what you're saying much easier for people to understand. So this is an important tip for making your communication really clear. So in sort of a real world context, you would think about this when giving instructions for that you'd like the children to carry out. So if you think about these two versions of instructions, first hang up your coat and then sit on the carpet. That's much easier for anyone to understand than sit on the carpet after you've hung up your coat. And you'll notice as well that the sequence words that I used there in that first one, first, then, are the words that children will be learning when they're starting to kind of form their own narrative. So it's kind of building on those same linguistic skills. The next one is to simplify your language and use short sentences. I know that you'll be doing this anyway, but just to mention it here, listening to speech places a really considerable load on working memory. We almost, as adults, you do it so automatically, you don't realise how clever it is and how much goes into it. And when we're given a lot of information to remember, it can be really hard to remember to follow instructions, even as adults, and that applies to children as well. So the next one is quite cute. It's about avoiding using non-literal language. So children under the age of 6 tend to take things very literally. I'm sure you'll have seen this as an early years educator. So we need to avoid using non-literal language with them wherever we can. Um, another part to this is that children also have to be able to fit what they're hearing from us into a framework of prior knowledge that they've built up through their experiences. That's how they kind of make sense of what we're saying. So just as an example, if you tell a child to jump like a frog, they'll only understand what you mean by that if they've seen a frog or if they've seen a frog jump. So we're kind of assuming that they have sort of a background of knowledge there that they may not. And so they may not understand things that we're saying that aren't literal. The next one is to use a slower rate of speech and to give children time to process the information and respond. Again, this is something we do pretty automatically as adults, but as young children, or especially with young children with language difficulties, there are a lot of things that they need to consider when they're choosing how to answer your question. And so this can take a little bit of time. So make sure you give them that time to kind of to formulate their response. And a good rule is to give 10 seconds, up to 10 seconds for a response, which can feel like a really long time, and obviously will sort of work better in one-to-one situations or small group situations. The next one is to use modelling to support the development of sentence structure. And this is a method of scaffolding language development. So when we model language, we listen carefully to what the child says, we interpret what they mean, and then we model it back to them using the correct sentence structure, words or word order, and at an appropriate level of complexity for that child as well. This modelling approach, is taught quite carefully in the NELI training because it's actually used by the practitioner in the narrative section of the individual sessions to improve children's stories, but there's no reason why it can't be used more broadly when interacting with children. And the last one here is just to consider how to encourage children to practice their language in conversation. So things like asking open questions, providing prompts to kind of encourage them to respond with more than a yes/no answer or a single word answer. Basically, by encouraging them to talk, they're getting to practice, and by practicing, they're improving. All right, so that was just a very brief overview of some of the techniques that you can incorporate into your interactions with children. And if that sounded useful, then I would really strongly recommend that you complete the NELI training. Even if you aren't delivering NELI sessions yourself, the first course especially is extremely useful. And if you would like an invitation, then please just get in touch with us on support@teachneli.org. All right, so to wrap up, I'd like to summarise for anyone that hasn't started NELI this year, 3 key steps which will really boost your team's ability to support children's language development this year and into the future as well. Okay, so step one is to start by assessing 5 children in your class with language screen. Now, you may choose to focus on children who you think may be experiencing language difficulties. So, for example, if they don't seem to be understanding instructions, if they're kind of demonstrating poor behaviour, if they're having difficulty making friends, or perhaps if they're learning English as an additional language, and so on. Assessing these children will um, help you to check for language delays, of course, but it will also help you to track the progress that they make between now and the end of the year. And this is especially important if you're planning to deliver any sort of language intervention. Then step two is to enrol staff on the NELI training. Now, I've already talked about this lots, so I won't spend much time on this one, but there are so many learnings from the training which can be embedded into practice immediately to support all children every day in interventions and in the classroom or daily interactions more broadly. So if you have an active NELI subscription, you can enrol staff by either emailing us on support@teachnelli.org, or if you are an admin of your school's OxEd account, you can also enrol staff via the training tab in the portal as well. And step three is to start by delivering the first 5 weeks of NELI. As I've mentioned, evidence suggests that the benefits of the intervention start to emerge early. So by starting the intervention now and seeing how far you can get, you are starting to build children's language skills. You're also improving their active listening and their behaviour, you're building their confidence, and you're also testing the programme out and getting yourself prepared to start earlier and with more confidence next year. Okay, that's it for the main section of the webinar today. Now I'm going to cover a couple of questions that were sent in via the registration form, and I will keep my focus on sort of NELI related questions, but if you do have any questions about NELI whole class, or if you want to find out more, then the details for that are on the slide. Okay, so the first question here is how do we select NELI? How do we select children and when are children ready for NELI? So the best way to select children for NELI is by assessing them with language screen. We do have other webinars where we go into more detail about this, so please do go look at those on the Teach NELI website. But language screen essentially provides a composite score, which is standardised according to a child's age. And then we would usually recommend that you assign the 4 to 6 children in each class with the lowest language screen scores to NELI. We do recommend that you complete your language screen assessments in the autumn term normally, and you may wish to sort of stagger your assessments according to the level of the children's engagement and comfort at school, just in the same way that you might do for your sort of reception baseline assessment. And by this, I mean sort of assessing children who are clearly settling in well first and earlier, and then perhaps assessing children who are taking a little bit longer to settle, or, children with EAL a little bit later, so that you can kind of really get the best picture of their abilities. Then as soon as you've finished your assessments, you can start NELI delivery. Usually this is at the start of the spring term, but lots of schools do start in the second half of the autumn term as well. And obviously lots of schools start a little bit, or some schools start a little bit later as well. And then the next question here is, we don't have time to deliver the whole programme, and what do we do? So the message here is really similar to what I outlined earlier for schools who hadn't yet started and wanted actions that they could take now. The key thing really is to assess the children that you can with language screen. And if you're limited on time, you might want to start with the children for whom you have concerns, although ideally you would, screen the whole cohort. This will help you check for any language difficulties, and it will also give you a baseline to measure their progress again at the end of the year. Then make a start on NELI. and deliver as many sessions as you're able to. The more group and individual sessions that you can deliver, the better. And we expect that you will start to see improvements really quickly. Also, if you know that you won't be able to deliver the full programme, perhaps liaise with the class teacher to see how you can extend the NELI teaching out into the classroom, as we've discussed today. Or if there might even be a way of incorporating some of the activities that you won't have time to deliver into whole class time. All right. So that brings us to the end of our time together today. Thank you very much for your time and for your questions into the Q&A. Please follow up with us on support@teachneli.org if you have any further questions for us. Do keep an eye out for invitations to the rest of the webinars this year. And also, please get in touch with us if you have any ideas for topics that you would like us to cover. I'm always in the market for new webinar ideas. And also, if you'd like to showcase your school's NELI delivery as well, I'd absolutely love to hear from you. So please do get in touch. Right. Thank you very much, everyone, and we look forward to speaking to you again soon.